Right, ladies and gentlemen, the Fed pivots today just like expected. Jerome Powell dances, Fed boy, danced just like I thought that he would. Inflation, which their target is 2%, is obviously not there. Real inflation rates here in the United States are 20+%. We are living through a hyperinflationary collapse in the United States of America and the westernized world. This is a worst case scenario. And of course, the war in Ukraine, which they're going to blame the war in Ukraine and on Vladimir Putin for the hyperinflation, is the perfect scapegoat for their gross negligence. And of course, Jerome, who's just a face, a puppet of those that are actually in power, are driving the USA like the Titanic intentionally into icebergs to sink it. But I do want to talk about his commentary today because it's very important what he's saying, because he's signaling what he's going to do. So what's the summation of Jerome Powell, Fed boy's speech today, which is all one big teleprompter? Read, and you should be profiting on all of this, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. There's not much that I've gotten wrong. So let's see here. Dogecoin up 100% over the last 7 days. I told you that the Fed would weaken and pivot, that they would stop the rate hikes, that they would give us that language, that the markets would rally, and the deal of Twitter, the acquisition by Elon Musk, would be looked back on as the new start of the secular bull market in the cryptocurrency space. All things that are transpiring now. In fact, Litecoin up 10% earlier this morning. And I think we're going to see even more momentum pile into the crypto by this freaking dip trade as people realize what just happened. So there's only two mandates that the Federal Reserve has. One, price stability, which they get a giant F. An absolute failure. There's zero price stability here in the United States of America. We have hyperinflation, and it's a worst case scenario. Two, employment. Now, what's interesting about employment is even Fed Jerome Powell chair dude said himself, people don't want to work. So we have disproportionate demand for workers by employers, but people that actually don't want to work. Now, this is interesting and also plays in, of course, to the socialism and the universal basic income that they want. So the two mandates that they have, that the Fed has, unemployment, or full employment rather, and price stability, they get Fs on every single account. So what did the Federal Reserve do today? They did exactly what we expected, 75 basis point hike. They have raised interest rates some 3.75% this year. Now, it's important to understand that the Fed funds rate still sits at 4%. My grandma had a loan, a 30-year mortgage for like 15%. They own CDs at 20%. So we are still essentially at zero. These rate hikes are not hikes. They're fake, okay? And it assures hyperinflation. They would have to raise rates to 20% or higher to have any meaningful impact to get this economy back to where it should be without the obvious manipulation and fraud being implemented by the central bank and the Federal Reserve. So it's a 75 basis point hike to 4%. And it sounds like they're going to start softening by the end of the year, by Christmas. Now, again, they have the perfect scapegoat and smokescreen, which is going to be the World War III event in Ukraine, so they can blame Putin. And by the way, they're saying now that Putin has pancreatic cancer. These are the allegations. Also, beginning stages of not Alzheimer's, but it's the other one. It's the cognitive decline one. They say that he possibly or potentially might have some kind of schizo disorder. He's got the puffiness in his face. Some of you have probably seen that. There's accusations that he's got markings on his hands, that he's being filled up with steroids and all these kinds of painkillers and medications, that he's been shaking on tables. I don't know if I believe that, but obviously the westernized media is putting out this psych warfare to the general public as we engage in the war with Russia and ultimately China, which is what the proxy war is. Also, the Pentagon is now admitting U.S. troops are on the ground. They're calling them inspectors, but they're now admitting U.S. troops on the ground in Ukraine. So it's a full-blown ground invasion, worst case scenario, which will ultimately lead us into further escalation as we've seen Saudi Arabia, of course, pivot, warn of Iranian attacks here in the last 48 hours, and as we've seen Saudi Arabia completely depart from the U.S. hegemony and cut some 2 million barrels of oil per day. Another thing that's going to create a boon for inflation, so we know it's not going to stop. So U.S. is not stable at all. It's unstable. We don't have stability. We had a 2.6 GDP rate last quarter, and we see that kind of trending with really not real any growth. And that's another major thing that you need to understand is in the westernized world, especially here in the United States, we're in a marketplace where there's zero growth permanently. So there's zero real growth and high inflation rates. So that's not just stagflation, it's hyperinflation. No growth and high inflation. Now, if you want to control people and populations, what you do is you make it so they can't afford energy and they can't afford food. And of course, energy determines the food that they can actually afford. So very, very bad. Consumer spending is also slowing as a result of the rate hikes because the end consumer is extremely, extremely weak after the lockdowns and the shutdowns and all the job losses in recent years that the politicians have caused. And now the sanctions, which are causing Europeans to freeze, all by design and intent overseas, is something, of course, that they did. So consumer spending is slowing. We are seeing a little bit of a housing slowdown in parts of the country, not here in Maui, Boo. All the elites and all the wealthy and all the big money is continuing to flow into Maui, Boo. And all these cash flow producing assets is the opportunity of a lifetime. You guys should be getting an island project and more. But as median size home prices and the average Joe, we are seeing an impact with that in some of the hottest hit areas with mortgage rates now nearing like 7%. So the labor force is out of balance. No one wants to work. That's what they want so that they can issue UBI. Inflation is well above 2%. Just add a zero to it. We're at 20%, I would argue, real inflation rates. We have a war in Ukraine, long period of below trend growth, zero growth and high inflation, and now the Fed doing exactly what they thought that they were going to do. So I'm not necessarily expecting huge moves today in the cryptocurrency market or in the stock market. I'm expecting this to settle in, and then the institutions that they've been building their positions to pile in. And then once the identifiable trend is identified by the general public, they're going to capitulate in as well. So I'm mostly watching, I was watching the Federal Reserve today. I'm also watching, of course, what's going on with the proxy war in Ukraine, which is exactly what it is. And I was tweeting. You can follow me at AMTV Media, my official Twitter account. Elon Musk now charging $8, I think it is, a month for a blue check mark. I actually support that because it'll limit bots and scams, and it's the only way to properly ID public figures. As you see, all of us on the internet have problems with that. So I actually support that. I think that that's a very good move. We're also seeing Elon Musk, through his purchase of Twitter, now fact-checking the White House. So, for example, the White House just deleted a tweet saying that they were crediting Biden for Social Security payment increases. Well, that was actually set by a former president of the United States regarding inflation. It's not something that Biden specifically did. So it's funny to see them cower and all the rats now flee the nest. Also, the United States, this is from my Twitter, now fully admits that troops are in Ukraine. I already reported on that. And we can also see here big tech. If you look at all these companies on my phone, I tweeted it, all the blue. This is a chart of all the large Fortune 100 big tech companies and their donations for the midterms to Democratic leadership. So just take a look at how they're absolutely opposed to conservatism in the Republican Party and people that actually are a little bit more conservative. Look at that. This is the red, that's the Republican, and this is the blue donations from companies like Netflix, Twitter, Airbnb, Apple, Stripe, Lyft, Google, Alphabet, Salesforce, Facebook, Tesla, eBay, PayPal, Microsoft, Amazon, Uber, the list goes on and on. In fact, Oracle is kind of interesting at the bottom, is actually the most conservative. But you can see here it's overwhelmingly weaponized towards liberals and Democrats. So basically the entire internet and all Fortune 100 companies, the big power brokers and monopolies here in the USA, all lean to the left. None of them lean right. So it's an absolute oligopolistic political system with really no fairness at all. But I do want to talk about Putin because I was talking about that. They say he has pancreatic. These are the allegations. I'm not saying I believe them. He's alleged to have markings on his hands from IV injections in the shakes in recent months. And they are also saying that he might have early stage Parkinson's disease and schizoaffective disorder. Now, first off, if he's got pancreatic, that would mean he would only have months to live, depending on the type of it. I've had family members with pancreatic. They only last a couple of months. My grandfather, God rest his soul. I've had friends. If you get pancreatic, it's over. Just expect to rest in peace. And so if that's true, Putin would only have months to live. How would this impact his use of, say, potential nukes or defenses? Is this to be believed? Why would the Kremlin inner circle allow him to maintain his position of power unless perhaps he's just a true autocratic leader with absolute control and power? If he wasn't going to be here by 2023, then you think that they would just simply replace him. So a lot up in the air right now. We can all feel what's happening. Again, we see the beast fully expose himself yesterday. Elon Musk, of course, dressing in full demonic Satan garb over the Halloween holiday. It's not a holiday I celebrate, but of course, and pagans like to celebrate that. We saw his mom dressed up as a witch. He had upside down crosses all over his body. In fact, if you go to Elon Musk's Twitter account right now, it says he's in the location of hell. So he's literally dressing as Satan, dressing as the devil. He has upside down seance crosses. His mom's dressed up with an all-seeing eye. She poses in Vogue. She looks like she's dressed like some kind of demonic witch. And he himself also says he lives in hell as he takes over Twitter, and he's about to promote Neuralink and the brain chip, which I would say is the mark of the beast that they're going to put in people's freaking heads as they take cell phones out of people's hands and then put them into their freaking heads. So again, guys, pretty wild out there, but Jerome Fed Boy Powell danced just like I thought he would. 75 basis point hike, and then more importantly, his language that they're going to start softening. Because the only thing we can count on America and the Federal Reserve is for them to bail themselves out to infinity, cut rates to zero, and keep on dancing for the elites in Wall Street. Once you learn these truths, ladies and gentlemen, and the secret that America's a scam and Wall Street's a scam, that's when you start to make the real money. That's what the hedge funds know, that's what Wall Street knows, and that's what the big banks know. So just understand that truth and hard-hitting fact. Always expect a bailout. Always expect Fed boy Jerome Powell to dance. Always expect rates to be at zero. Always expect war, the military-industrial complex to continue its pursuit. And then expect a full-blown economic, financial, hyperinflationary collapse here in the United States and the West, all by design, and an eventual reset to CBDCs and digital currencies. All by design. Trust that plan. Started decades ago, and we're living through it now. Anyways, guys, pivot, leverage, and profit today. Your first shift in mindset. People say they need money to make money. That's not true. The first thing that you need is mindset capital. That's the most valuable capital, human energy, your mind. So if you're not thinking about how to make $1 million, that's actually your first step. It's easier once you have money to compound, of course, those returns, but the first step is mindset capital. I also encourage you guys, when's the last time you learned something new? If you can't answer that question, click the link below and get in at school right now at theislandprojectclub.com. It's a $1,500 minimum to get in. It includes a phone call with me. You get my last 2 picks, which I think potentially could 1,000x, and a whole heck of a lot more, plus early bird access to the eventual public chain roadmap and blowout as we take Island Project worldwide. That's islandprojectclub.com and our private placement, islandproject.com. And by the way, get your money out of the banks. You can get in and roll over your IRAs. If you want to learn more about that, contact me and my team. Speak to my father. We have a trusted third party that I have no affiliation with at all that can help you roll your IRAs and retirement accounts, or a portion of your retirement account, into the Island Project real estate portfolio. It's a fantastic opportunity. We're the good guys, ladies and gentlemen. We're the anti-hedge funds. We're the anti-Wall Street. Power to the freaking people. 1,000x to the freaking moon. Get in now before it's too late. Do not let your money sit at a bank during capital controls and possible bank runs here in the United States of America and the westernized world. Get into real assets like what you see behind me right now. We generate cash flows annually, large capital gain appreciation potential, and the whole thing is being tokenized fractionally. No one else has done this in the world with beach and ocean front in the history of mankind. Islandproject.com, islandprojectclub.com. Want to see you there, and then please share this video around the world. Jesus Christ is King. We are the light in the darkness. That's the Island Project.